Hello, everybody. I hope everyone's having a great Tuesday morning. My name is Kristen Adams, and I am a nurse practitioner by trade. I've been in the network marketing industry for about 8 years. I've been able to create a great income with network marketing, and I'm so excited to be able to share with you guys today a little bit of what I've learned about. I'm going to make sure I got captions on here real quick. Perfect. I'm going to share with you guys today about how I've learned to use my knowledge as a nurse practitioner to be very careful, get my point across on what I want to say about the products, but stay compliant. And I hope that you guys learn a few tricks of the trade today during this call and learn some workarounds in order to figure out how to say what you want to say, but stay compliant. And also why it's so much more impactful when we are compliant versus saying medical diagnosis, medical claim. Right? So this is kind of like a boring overview at the beginning, but hopefully by the end of it, you guys feel empowered to be able to talk freely about our products and also get the most bang for your buck when you are sharing about them. So the number one tip that I have, and this is what doctors and nurse practitioners and PAs use to bill for diagnoses. If you can find your questionable word plus ICD-10, when you Google it, it comes up with something, then it is a diagnosis. If you Google it and it doesn't come up with something, then it's not, okay? So the most common one is pain. I see pain in network marketing all of the time. Do you guys too? And it makes me cringe because there are like 17 different diagnoses related to pain. So I put into the Google ICD-10 and the word pain, and this comes up. Do you see this code down here, G89.0? That is what a doctor, a nurse practitioner, a PA is going to send into their medical billing and get paid for that diagnosis. So that is a word we cannot use and gets a lot of companies into trouble, all right? So this is something that I want you guys to save in your text, like your text generator things or your boards, ICD-10, because if you're ever in question, words like nausea, words like headache, words like insomnia, obesity, those are medical diagnoses. And while the FDA may not be looking at us that tightly right now, we are going to be making big waves, I feel like, in the future. And so we want to make sure that even our stuff from this year is compliant and last year is compliant, because they can start searching Facebook leaders and ding us for stuff done before, we even really made the mark on the FDA and the FTC. So it's really important that we stay compliant. What can you use instead of the word pain? You can use anything that you would basically say to a toddler. So does that hurt? Do you have tinglies? Does that not feel good? I know that sounds really like generic, but think about this. If you were going to describe a headache, you could say headache doesn't count, pain in the head doesn't count, but my head discomfort, it was throbbing, it was aching. I felt like I couldn't lift my head off the pillow. The light bothered me. The sounds bothered me. I was so snappy with my kids because I had no patience because the discomfort was so bad. Now, if I said all that to you versus I have a migraine, which one impacts you more, right? Me describing that, especially if you're a migraine sufferer, to hear someone go through that and tick the boxes of all the things you struggle with, right? Like, I can't keep anything down. All the food smells gross. Like, when you're describing your experience, it's way more impactful than the diagnosis. Okay. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I love that on the PDFs that the company provides for us, they have this little section. Do you guys all know where I'm talking about? On the PDF, it's the top right corner. I cut that out and I put it in my stories. In fact, this morning when I made my plus, I put this little chunk of for the plus into my stories. And I love that the words they use are completely compliant. So improved mood sounds way better than my anxiety or help with depression. We want to avoid those. Improve focus, alertness, avoid ADHD. And we're going to go over another example of that later. Boost energy, avoids fatigue. Fatigue is another diagnosis. So I'm going to let you guys in the chat, if you guys have quick fingers, put in some things that you use to describe brain, and I will say yay or nay for if it's compliant. And we can do this again at the end too if we don't get very many, but drop me a few things that you like to say about brain, and let's see if you guys have some great ideas that are compliant or that maybe need a little workaround. Do a suggestive words to use instead. Brain fog, that one is compliant. Happy mood, energy day, no brain fog, totally compliant. Improves my mood, my focus, my energy, compliant. Fatigue, babe, not compliant. You can say exhaustion, exhaustion's fine. You can say can't feel like I can't get out of bed. You can say want to take a nap all day long. You can say feeling like my energy is on zero, stuff like that. Mood enhancer, all day energy. You guys are doing so good. I love it. All right, let's go to the next one. So this one is one example that I wanted to give you guys about the difference in the wording. So I'm excited to tell you about my brain experience. It helped with my ADHD. Okay, not compliant, right? Not compliant. Also, a lot of people are going to have that feeling of like, yeah, okay, sure, it helped with your ADHD, right? Because it seems a little bit crazy, a little far-fetched that a supplement could help with something so big and that impacts so many people. How about this? When I started taking brain, I noticed I was less impulsive. I could prioritize my day better, and I felt like I was a more patient mom. Which one, if you read it, would be like, oh, I need that, right? The second one. Now, of course, your symptoms might be different, but there's a hack that you can use for Google. Take the diagnosis ADHD and type in symptoms related to ADHD or symptoms with ADHD. And you know what I found? Impulsive behavior, trouble organizing and prioritizing their day, and impatient. So what did I use? I said, oh, I struggle with these 3 things. How can I word that into a compliant sentence to make it sound like somebody else who maybe doesn't even have that diagnosis but struggles with these things would want to take a look at my product, right? You're going to impact more people than when you use the diagnosis. All right, so let's talk about Zlin. Zlin is a hard one because gut health, my understanding is gut health is starting to become a buzzword that the FDA is looking at. So you really need to be mindful of that. Improves digestion, helps with, your gut lining and stuff like that. We can get a little creative with that. Go ahead and drop in the comments a couple of things that you like to say about Zlin, and let's see if we can get really good wording for you guys. But here are some things that you want to avoid. And this is really hard because obesity, overweight, morbid obesity, things like that are technically diagnoses. So I tend to use words that are a little less harsh. I feel like I am someone who struggles with weight. You guys are going to see my before 1 month and 2 months on these products. I'm going to show you guys on the last slide. And I do struggle. I am technically obese when I started. Now I'm moving towards overweight, but I say things like fluffiness or some of the extra weight left over from having 4 kids, or I have a little extra weight around my stomach I'd like to remove. So saying that makes people feel like it's not like if someone walked up to me like a doctor and was like, you're obese, I'd be like, yeah, thanks, bud. But if someone was like, hey, I know you're struggling with a little bit of weight around your stomach, and I do too, I might have something that could help. That doesn't seem as harsh. Okay. One other thing that I've seen is, and maybe it's because I run in circles of nurses, but circadian rhythm is actually a diagnosis. So circadian rhythm is our natural cycle that melatonin dumps into our systems during the night to help us sleep. And if you've ever worked night shift, like I have, your circadian rhythm is really messed up. But we need to be mindful of that because that is technically a diagnosis. Depression, anxiety, of course, we already talked about that. Insomnia and sleep deprivation are also diagnoses. So when we talk about sleep, we need to make sure that we're not saying things like it cured my insomnia or I don't struggle with insomnia anymore. Use the words that describe it. I used to stay awake till 3 o'clock in the morning scrolling on TikTok. Have you ever done that? I just couldn't get my brain to shut off at night. Anxiety, sleep deprivation, right? Now, when I take my Zlin at 10 o'clock, by 10:30, I'm asleep. I feel like I'm more rested when I wake up in the morning and I can take on my day better. And I start getting more tired earlier in the day. I feel like that sleep, cycle is getting better for me. That is way more compliant than saying my circadian rhythm was messed up and I used to be anxious and think about how little sleep I was going to get. And then I couldn't go to sleep because I had an insomnia. And then when I woke up, I was fatigued. All of those are diagnoses versus what I said was not. Okay, so I'm going to go over some of these. Oh, I love these. I can already tell there's so many really good compliant ones. Okay. Yes, good point, Megan Summers, for the ADHD one. I missed it. She said those who don't have ADHD might dismiss it because that's not something that they visualize within themselves, but we all struggle with a lot of those symptoms of like prioritization and focus and stuff. Okay, so REM sleep is, if you say REM sleep, that is technically going, probably tiptoeing up to that line. I would just talk about gives you a deep sleep that helps you dream. Someone was to put into Googler, what sleep do you dream in? It would come up with REM sleep. So I talk a lot about that I'm actually dreaming now, and I've never been able to get that deep of sleep before. And that is technically saying the same thing, but without tiptoeing that line. Sleep is better, improve gut health, burns fat. Bat wings, yes, bat wings are completely fine. Mitoburn helps convert fat into utilized for energy while I sleep. Yep, totally fine. Mommy tummy, absolutely. Pouch, absolutely. Better sleep, detox, and burn fat. Now, detox is a very cliche word. Nobody really knows what that means in the medical community. So I like to say that it removes extra toxins and waste from my gut. I think that people don't necessarily, when they hear detox, they think like the Hollywood form of detox, like, oh, am I not gonna be able to eat anything? I'm gonna have to do a juice cleanse, blah, blah, blah. So I would just be mindful you're talking to with those words. All right, let's talk youth. Youth's a fun one, but in my opinion, I think that it's easy to overpromise with youth, and even overpromising compliant results would be technically like making false claims. So we need to be mindful of that. Like using kind of generic terms like, this is my fountain of, this is how I keep my skin so great, versus saying like, this is turn you into a teenager, right? Or something like that. Because we know that that's overpromising, especially if you're talking to someone who already is showing age marks and things. Nitric oxide booster is a huge ingredient. For those of you who have not Googled what that is, I tell people all the time, especially people who are looking for help with ED. And if you don't know what that is, Google that one. Lowering blood pressure, improving circulation, oxygenation in the body. So people of the older generation, I tell them, I say, you know what? Go into Google, type in these words, nitric oxide booster benefits. And the first thing that comes up is all of this stuff, all of these medical things that would really help them improve their breathing, improve their cardiac stuff. Everything that they need, especially as we advance in age, is super, super helpful. But I'm not going to claim that. Instead, I'm going to have them go look it up. Also, I tell people a lot of times, especially if they have concerns that they're getting older, this product is like my go-to for anyone over the age of 60. And I tell them to Google nitric oxide booster benefits and oxidative stress reducer benefits, because it does talk a lot about the antioxidants and how they are decreasing the risk of cancer and disease like cardiac disease and things like that. But we can't make those claims. But I tell people all the time to go Google it for themselves, what this does. And then they come back and they're like, I want 3 boxes, right? So giving people helpful hints to figure out what they need, but don't make those medical claims publicly. Joint juice is totally fine. With skin things, there's a lot of diagnoses we can talk about. So psoriasis, can't say that. Can't say eczema. Can't say acne. Acne is another one that's a diagnosis. But describe it, right? I used to struggle with pustules that would pop on my face. I'd get these big, huge marks. You can say pimples, you just can't say acne. Get these big, huge pimples that were full of pus. And now that I've been using the youth, my skin is starting to clear up, right? All of those things are okay. But acne and things like that, blemishes is another good word that you guys can use. Again, if you're ever in doubt, just Google IC10 and then whatever it is, and you'll be able to know if it's a diagnosis or not really quickly. But skin stuff, almost all skin stuff has a name. So rosacea, chicken skin is what some people call it, but there's a diagnosis. You can say chicken skin, or like when people get those red marks on their arms like that. As long as you're driving it or using like a name for it, you'll be fine. Like pimples is an off the cuff or acne, so it's okay to use. All right, plus it's the one I put in my coffee. Does everybody have their this morning? One of my favorites. This again is really just the obesity. We need to make sure that when we're sharing about this, that we're talking that it's going to help your body boost its metabolism. That is not a medical claim. That it's going to appetite control, totally fine. Converting fat to energy, totally fine. All of these little words that they use on the side are fine. But the number one thing that I see with the weight loss stuff is compliant testimonials. Making sure that when you're doing your before and afters, that they are the best compliant that you can do. Okay, so here are my personal results. I literally just took this morning for the Biohack 50. I hope everybody is in that. If you're not, get with your sponsor and say, get me into the Biohack 50. But before and afters will never be completely perfect because you should be taking them not like in the same day, right? We do know that a lot of diet companies will say, okay, stick your gut out. Okay, now flex. And then they put that out as like a before and after. We want to actually see time elapsing. So you can tell by my ponytail how much time has gone by. You can tell that my shoulders and my hips are as best lined up as I could be. I'm trying to wear similar clothes in all of them. I'm wearing the same style of bra. I'm wearing the same type of pant. I have it rolled down the same length. Don't try to hide your mommy tummy in your after by rolling your compression leggings up to hide your panties. That's what that chunk is that hangs down below, that Dunlap underneath your belt. Yes, I have one of those. I've had 4 babies and C-sections. So you want people to be able to look at that and be like, wow, okay, I can tell that one, you can see that the Zlin worked good on my before I started taking the products to my after, right? But then now you notice that the bloat is staying gone, but the actual fat is starting to dissolve a little bit more. Maybe, I don't know, can't really tell. Down in my weight a little bit. You want to make sure that you're putting the dates on there. And this isn't super pretty because I just did this 5 minutes before this call. And the products that you're using. I see a lot of before and after photos, especially in our group, which are amazing, but they don't say the products and they don't necessarily the date, or it's kind of like a roundabout, like before and after. That's not completely compliant. That is something that the FDA could come after us for, saying that we're making claims, right? We're making health claims. So we want to make sure that if somebody's going to be circulating your photo that you don't know because we're posting it in a forum where it's shared, we want to make sure that it's compliant, that if anybody shared your photo, they couldn't throw a different company's name on it. Have you guys ever seen that happen where someone is taking Vellavita products and all of a sudden it shows up on like an It Works company page? I know I've literally seen that happen where there are people that I know that are from this company that their photos are being shared by It Works distributors. So just be really, really mindful to have that on your photo. And it's better to have it somewhere where it can't be cropped out, but I just wasn't very creative today. So now I'm going to open it up to questions. We have plenty of time. I'm going to make it so that you guys can unmute yourself, allow participants to unmute yourself, or you can drop it in the comments. And if you are struggling with a certain way to describe something, or you tend to have the same medical question come up, and you just want an example of how to approach it, I would be more than happy to share how I do that and help you guys figure out some better wording.
What about just digestive issues? Like I have gastroparesis, which is very specific, and people who have that will trigger that word, but I realize that's a diagnosis. So what's a good way to go about your different symptoms for digestive issues?
So Michelle, what's the number one thing you struggle with? If you don't
So
mind.
for me, it's going to be bloating and pain in the gut.
Mm-hmm. So instead, I would say I've struggled with bloating and you can't say pain. So gut discomfort, cramping, twisting, aching for years or however long it's bothered you. And since I started using these products that actually have ingredients that remove toxins from my gut and help my gut be as happy as possible, I haven't struggled with those symptoms, or they're greatly reduced, whatever it is for you. And again, using the words to describe pain, like my guts feel like they were twisting and knotting when I would sleep. If I ate something that didn't agree with me, I would just immediately want to throw up or whatever, make the little emoji on there. Describing it is going to be way more impactful than even using the diagnosis. Good question. Reducing inflammation. Reducing inflammation is a good one. So that's one that's been flagged recently by the FTC and the FDA and all those different groups that look over us. So I would identify a place in your body that you struggle with inflammation. So maybe your hands. And take a photo of your hands when they're real swollen. Maybe it's you took a day off of the products, or you had like a birthday party and you ate pizza and drank beer and your rings are real stuck, right? And then you take your products and the next day you take a picture and your rings are sliding on and off. You can say, I'm so glad that I have my blah, blah, blah supplements because I usually struggle with this swelling in my joints and this discomfort. And sometimes when I eat foods or I'm not, I'm drinking the wrong things or however you want to say it, I can't get my rings on and off. And now I can. I love that my joints feel better, my mobility is better, and I don't have as much swelling. Welcome. The number one thing I can give you guys for staying compliant is just describe it. Describe it in a way that someone who struggles with the same thing or someone who struggles with that can say, oh my gosh, me too, right? So I'll give you another example. We still have plenty of time. My mother-in-law is a long COVID on oxygen, has philic lung inflammation because she was a hairdresser and she's got a bunch of hair in her lungs. Okay. And she's been on oxygen now for almost a year. She was taking a different collagen and she didn't want to give it up because she could ride her exercise bike for 5 minutes without oxygen using another company's oxygen. Well, when things changed with me, I tried to get her on this one and she refused. But I convinced her to take it for 5 days. And at the end of those 5 days, she could ride her exercise bike for 20 minutes without oxygen. What an improvement. She also felt like she could finally take a deep breath, and she hasn't been able to do that for a year. Oh, is that compliant? It is not, because I said her diagnosis is. So if I wanted to talk about it, I would have to talk about the fact that my mother-in-law struggles with her breathing. It's been a problem. She has a medical device that helps deliver oxygen for her, things like that. But I wouldn't be able to use those diagnoses even to describe what she has. Does that make sense? So you really need to not even put the diagnoses anywhere on the post, but everything else I said was fine. But that's one of the ways that I see people doing it all the time. So they'll say, oh, I have XYZ, DEF diagnoses, and now I feel better. The second half is compliant because they're watching that, but them talking about all their diagnoses in the same post, not compliant. Okay, so someone has a tear in their shoulder, so they have some damage, whether it's ligament or tendon damage. What I would simply say is, I have an old sports injury from a long time ago when I was playing tennis or when I was playing golf or whatever. And it's always bothered me. In fact, the surgeon said the only way that I could get back to normal is if I let him operate on me, but I definitely didn't want to do that. I started taking the youth and I noticed my range of motion was better. My discomfort was better. I feel like I can move my shoulder more freely. And I'm going to tell that surgeon I'm not coming back, right? So I would not use what type of tear, what you tore, anything like that. All of those are diagnoses. I would not even say surgery. I would say he told me to. I would just say, he says the only way I'm going to get better is if I let them operate me. I really don't do that. So I started taking the collagen and I noticed that things improved enough where I don't want to make another appointment. Something like that would be fine. And I'm glad the youth has helped your lungs too. It's a crazy side effect. Can we say energy? Yes, absolutely. You can say energy. Energy is totally fine. The only one that really, as far as energy goes, that's not compliant is the word fatigue, but use exhausted, drained, overworked, overstimulated, things like that, that us mamas feel. Like, literally think about how you feel in that moment when your kids are climbing all over you and you're just drained, and describe that. And then talk about how the brain or the youth or the plus take that away, make you not feel that way. You guys are easy. Surely there's other, I get messages all the time with diagnoses. What about when they say, can I take this with medications? Megan, talking about your ADHD, but not SNAP related. As long as you don't have a SNAP in the photo, it should be fine. It's very unlikely that someone's going to be looking at your Facebook page and being like, oh, Bellavita, oh, diagnosis, oh, Bellavita, oh, diagnosis. But I would just make sure to keep those pretty limited, especially if you're going to use the diagnosis term. Maybe come up with like a cute phrase that you use instead of ADHD, just to make sure you stay there. So let's talk about medications. Can I take XYZ if I'm on XYZ, right? So I've personally looked at a lot of I'm going to stop this Q&A screen share here. Oh, no, I'm not, because I have we have a new group that's coming in that speaks, or they're deaf. So I want to make sure I have subtitles. Okay, so medications. Doctors are very limited on the training that they get for supplementation. Most of them, that training was 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? Back in the 70s or the 80s, and they do not care. As a nurse practitioner, I cared a little bit more about what my patients wanted to supplement. Most DOs have more experience with that than MDs. PAs have literally none. So it really depends on who you get. And it's kind of like, just pulling fish out of the barrel, whether you got a doctor that actually cares about your supplementation and your goals or not. So instead, what I tell people to do is rather than go and see their doctor, I say, where do you get your medications? Do you have a relationship with your pharmacist? Go ask your pharmacist to take a look at your medications and your supplements. Bring the PDFs that have all the ingredients with you or have them on your phone and have them take a look. There's also an interaction checker on the website called drugs.com. I know that sounds bad, but they mean prescription drugs, where you can put in supplements and you can put in medications, and they'll tell you. They err on the side of very cautious when it comes to that. They assume that you're taking a therapeutic dose of everything. So if you were to put the Zlin in there with all 40 ingredients, and it's going to think you're taking like a full dose of all of those ingredients. So it's not really the best tool, but it is an option. The one thing that I will say that I have noticed that there might be problems with is blood thinners. So if someone is on Coumadin, Pradaxa, any of those kind of things, you do want to have them check with their usually heart doctor or cancer doctor if they're on something like that. And you're not going to see that in the younger generations mostly, but there has been an influx since the recent vaccination schedule has come out. So just be mindful with blood thinners. Talking to their pharmacist, they're going to get a more well-rounded approach. Like, what are your goals? Why are you taking this? What are your medications? XYZ. Now, I will tell people who aren't interested in talking to the doctor, they just want to take it because they have it set that they want to take the brain and they're on antidepressants or they're on anti-anxiety medicines. What I tell people is I just simply say, you know what? Keep a journal. Whether it's just you're texting to yourself, you're texting to your husband, you're writing it down on a piece of paper, monitor your mood. If this does what you're hoping that it's going to do, then you're going to want to see your doctor, let them know what you're taking and how you're feeling. And a journal over the course of 2 weeks or a month is going to help compel that doctor to make adjustments that are best for you. So I'll coach people on that. I think that it's really important for all of us to know that we can't tell someone that it's okay to take blah, blah, blah with medications, but there are going to be people who are going to make their own choices. I just simply point them to their pharmacist over their doctor. Now, if they use an online pharmacy, they can't do that. But, and I also let them know if the nurse or nurse practitioner has time to see you, a lot of times they'll help get that message to your doctor. A lot of times the nurses will do a Google search for you and help you figure out if those ingredients would be a problem before they bother the doctor too. So that's always an option as well. Questions about the medications? Scatterbrain is fine to use, Felicia. The doctor said any stimulants. Yeah, if you have someone who's on phentermine or some sort of weight loss medication, any of the ones that are for diabetes probably would be fine with this. But if you are taking a medication that is a stimulant for ADHD and then you're taking the brain on top of it, it might be too much for them. So that's why I think a journal is really important. And start small, start with half. There's no reason someone can't start with a half a packet or a few drops and then throw it in their fridge for later. Taking extra melatonin with Zlin. Melatonin is a hormone that's naturally found in our body. And if someone is not sleeping well and they're taking the Zlin, there's two things that I think would be important. Number one, make sure that they're not eating right before bed. So tell them to stop eating at like 8 o'clock so their stomach is more empty. My favorite way to take this Zlin is with a little bit of chocolate almond milk. That's going to be enough to kind of coat their stomach if they're sensitive to taking it on an empty stomach. But then the other thing is melatonin and vitamin D are inversely related. And if they're not going out in the sun, they're as pasty white as I am, or they live north of Atlanta, they probably need some sort of vitamin D supplement. And so they should be taking vitamin D immediately when they wake up. Because if you don't have vitamin D, your melatonin naturally isn't going to work as well because they do this during the day, right? And that just goes from ancient times when we used to be out in the fields all day and then we'd fall asleep as soon as it got dark, We obviously now have artificial light and then we don't spend as much time outside. So vitamin D would be probably what they're missing, Jessica, not needing more melatonin. Meniere's disease, so they're having trouble with vertigo and things like that. All of those are diagnoses. Do I think that this could help? I have no idea. It'd be cool if it did. I'd probably say the youth would be the most helpful of any of them as far as Meniere's go. But again, everything related to Meniere's, it's hard because nausea, vertigo, dizziness, fatigue, all of those things are diagnoses in themselves. So any other questions? Y'all can unmute. Oh yeah, Whitney, if your husband's a pharmacist, don't take that on. My key words for people, especially because I'm an NP, is I am not your doctor. I have not evaluated you. I do not know your specific body, but here's what I suggest. If you really want to know if you know what your pharmacist thinks about these, take in the PDFs and have them look it up. They might tell you they'll call you tomorrow, but you'll get an answer. No other questions?
How long should we tell people, like, do they need to expect? So like this one woman, she's taking the extra melatonin because she can't fall asleep with just taking Zlin. She's not eating past 6 o'clock. So it's not that. I'll check with her on the vitamin D thing, but like, how long would you say is reasonable for someone to try? You know, like I want to give them reasonable timeframes to actually see the results. What do you recommend?
So I personally take vitamin D plus K2. It's liposome off Amazon, and it's 5,000 units. I mean, she might, if she's really taking that much, she might want to just go into the doctor and have her levels checked, because they may give her like 50,000 units to take once or twice a week. But I will tell you, when my vitamin D was low and I was taking a ton of melatonin because I was working night shifts, it was 11, which is really not compatible with life. It's like way, way, way low. And within taking it for 2 weeks, I felt much better, felt human again. So if she's struggling like that, you know, it's going to be a couple of weeks at least to get her levels up to 20 is like bottom of normal. 50, you actually feel human. But
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, someone shouldn't really need more than 5 milligrams of melatonin. So if they're needing extra, makes me think something else is going on. Balanced serotonin levels. I probably wouldn't say that, because how do you know that? Like, you're making an assumption. I would just say it has the building blocks of what your body uses to create serotonin. So serotonin is created in the gut from good bacteria. It needs 5-HTP to be able to do that. And we are hitting it twice. We're helping the gut lining. We're helping improve that gut-brain access, right? But 2, we're giving it the building blocks that your body needs to build the right amount of serotonin for you. Yeah, if you have thyroid issues. So if she has thyroid issues too, that's a great point, Christy. Again, it sounds like that lady's got a lot going on if she's needing all that extra melatonin. And I tell people that all the time too, when they say, well, Zlin didn't work for me. I double check, make sure they're not got a full belly of pizza and ice cream. And then 2, I'm like, there might be something else going on. Have you gone to the doctor and gotten checked out just to see what else could be happening? So there's a lot of people with thyroid issues right now. All right, well, this has been fun. I know it's kind of a boring subject, but I think when you guys get the hang of how to describe things versus just throwing like a hype word on there, like anxiety, you're going to get more responses because people believe you better. Like, this helps me with my worry and it helps me not snap at my kids so much, is going to get me more attention than saying it helps with my anxiety. So I think that it will help you guys too. And we will put this recording up. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Bye.